WBTV On Your Side presentation, your guide to campaign 2020.
Thank you, North Carolina.
Hello, North Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina to
North Carolina.
This election, the eyes are on your vote.
I'm 81 and I don't want to leave, not vote.
I was ready to vote, to let my voice be heard.
A heated race for president.
The question Supreme Court Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
We believe that God put Trump where he's at to bring this country back.
I just think it's time for a change, really time for a change.
A battle for control of the U.S. Senate.
If Democrats want to retake control, they have to net 3 seats if Joe Biden wins the White House, or 4 seats if President Trump holds on.
And the local decisions that will shape our community.
It would lead to more jobs on the east side.
You are choosing the future of our country during unprecedented times.
Every election is important, and this one is very important.
So we are on your side, guiding you through it all. From the weight of your vote.
I was that same person, like, man, I ain't voting, it ain't gonna matter to me anyway. But at the end of the day, it does matter.
You need to exercise your vote. Why be silent?
To what you need to do to make sure it counts.
You're watching a WBTV special, your guide to campaign 2020.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for this WBTV News special. I'm Maureen O'Boyle.
And I'm Jamie Bold. No doubt about it, this election is like none other we have experienced before. In fact, you're looking at the proof right here. Tonight, Maureen and I bringing you this election special as we remain socially distanced here in the WBTV studio.
The threat of COVID-19 has changed our world this year, Jamie. Wearing face masks at the grocery store is mandatory. Shaking hands and hugging is frowned upon. And the list of stores, restaurants, and venues closing just keeps growing. We've become a distanced society in the name of health, of course. But all of this is unfolding during an important election year.
Yeah, the way we live now has changed the way politicians have campaigned. If they're not hosting virtual events, campaign staff are scanning supporters' temperatures and symptoms before they can enter a rally. We've even seen politicians catch the virus, and it has been one of, if not the biggest topics of campaign 2020. And all of these health concerns have trickled down to our entire voting process.
Long lines I've seen on TV. I can't do it. I have some underlying health issues, and so I have to be careful about where I go, what I do, and who I'm around.
We're trying to make sure everybody is safe in this COVID pandemic that we're living in, and we're hopefully that we can keep everybody secure.
From voting by mail to going to the polls, there's a lot you need to know in order to feel confident that your vote will be counted and counted correctly.
So WBTV is on your side, guiding you through it all for the next hour. Let's start by setting the stage. What is at stake in 2020? The big headliner, of course, the race for president. Republican President Donald Trump running against Democrat former Vice President Joe Biden. They've had a close race in North Carolina and other critical battleground states. The latest CBS poll shows Biden up 4 points in North Carolina. That's why the candidates regularly mention North Carolina on campaign stops and during debates. It's also why their campaigns have made lots of visits to the state, virtually and in person, especially these last few weeks.
We're going to win 4 more years in the White House.
He's quit on you. He's quit on your family. He's quit on America.
There are a lot of other important races on the ballots in both the Carolinas as well. Eyes on the Carolinas in the race for control of the U.S. Senate. Democrats need to win 4 seats to regain control. 2 of the big deciders, the Carolinas. In North Carolina, Republican Senator Tom Tillis faces Democrat Cal Cunningham. Tillis diagnosed with COVID-19 in October. Cunningham apologizing for an extramarital affair the same day.
I am deeply sorry for the hurt that I have caused in my personal life. And I also apologize to all of you
And in South Carolina, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has served as U.S. Senator for nearly 18 years. But now he finds himself in a virtual tie with Democrat Jamie Harrison.
This is about what can we do to improve the state.
A candidate who has raised more money than any Senate candidate in U.S. history.
There's not enough money to flip this state. I do need to fight back.
Meantime, the state also choosing its governor. Democrat Governor Roy Cooper faces Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest, the two clashing over COVID-19, the economy, and schools.
Masks aren't the solution to everything. And in fact, Dr. Fauci said masks don't work. The Surgeon General of the United States said masks don't work. The CDC said masks don't work.
Really, Dan? Really? Masks don't work? Scientists say they don't? That is just absolutely not true. You're finding that on the dark corners of the internet.
All decisions that come down to you to shape our political landscape.
Just a few of the major races we're following. We also have several local races, from bond referendums to a race for sheriff. We'll be delving more into those throughout the hour. But first, there are some really important deadlines coming up, Jamie.
That is absolutely true, Maureen. Just a week out from Election Day. If you don't want to go out to the polls on Election Day itself, you will need to either vote early or vote by mail. And here are the dates you need to know. If you live in North Carolina, you can vote early in person until October 31st. You can go to any early voting location in your county. You can also register to vote at an early voting location. If you want to vote absentee, the deadline to request a ballot was today. If you have your ballot, you need to fill it out, get a witness signature, and either return it in person or have it postmarked by Election Day, November 3rd. In South Carolina, you can vote absentee in person, which is similar to early voting, until November 2nd. The deadline to request an absentee ballot has passed. If you're mailing in your ballot, you need to fill it out, get a witness signature, and return it to your elections office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Yeah, we are certainly getting down to it. Now, as for those who have already filled out their ballots and turned them in, we are seeing record numbers. Taking a look at mailed-in absentee ballots as of this morning, 804,000 people have mailed in their ballots in North Carolina. That is 8 times more than we saw at this point in the 2016 election. In South Carolina, 354,000 people have mailed in ballots, more than 2 times what we saw overall in the 2016 election. Now, in North Carolina, we can see party affiliations, and so far, about 40% of those voters are Democrat, 30% registered Republicans, 29% are unaffiliated. But as WBTV's Brandon Hamilton explains, this isn't necessarily how things will shape up come Election Day.
It's been a record turnout for voting so far, and when you take a look at the numbers, with the pandemic, voting by mail is up all across the Carolinas. Mail-in absentee voting, a hot commodity this time around. For many voters, the COVID-19 pandemic and health concerns meant making their voices heard by mail.
So I had to be careful about where I go, what I do, and who I'm around, so I thought this was the best way.
Voters like Cheryl McGee contributing to numbers in Mecklenburg County that have never been seen before. 20 to 25% of votes in this year's election are expected to come by mail.
These numbers are much bigger than we ever usually have in a general election. I think I noticed the last general election we voted a total of about 25,000 by mail. So that number that's just growing. Over three times what we expect. We expect to be 4 or 5 times by the time we finish the absentee ballots process.
In North Carolina, all registered voters could request an absentee ballot. A ballot must be completed in the presence of one witness and then postmarked with both signatures by Election Day, November the 3rd. For South Carolinians, officials estimate a record-setting 1 million voters will vote before Election Day. As the early voting numbers are totaled, Democrats are voting more than any other political group in North Carolina, including in Mecklenburg County. But officials warn to not let those numbers shock you.
This is a majority Democratic county. Most registered voters are, or the tier goes to Democrats, unaffiliates, and then Republicans. So That number wouldn't shock me if you see more Democrats and unaffiliates voting than Republicans right now, but that's just the trend it is in Mecklenburg County.
These numbers are updated every day on the Board of Elections website. We will be keeping an eye on these numbers as we get closer to Election Day. In Charlotte, Brandon Hamilton, WBTV, on your side.
Thank you, Brandon. Now, in addition to mailing in a ballot, there's also the option to vote in person before Election Day. Here's what you need to know.
Long lines I've seen on TV. I can't do it. I have some underlying health issues, and so I have to be careful about where I go, what I do, and who I'm around.
I wanted to make sure I was able to vote, and I saw it open today, so I decided to come and do it.
To me, you can no longer sit back and not vote.
In North Carolina, early voting runs through this Saturday, October 31st. You don't need an ID for this if you voted in North Carolina before. This year, for the first time, big venues like Bank of America Stadium, Spectrum Center, and Bojangles Coliseum are early voting locations.
We've worked with the Board of Elections Mecklenburg County to make sure that we could create a safe, efficient environment for people to come and exercise their right to vote.
Because the venues are so big, it's much easier to help you stay socially distant while you vote.
Very easy. I would say this is the way to go. The lines aren't as long. It's moving very quick. There's more sites.
Something else to note, if you are not registered to vote, in North Carolina, you can register to vote and cast a ballot at any early voting location. But you will need to provide proof of your residence. That can be any of the things listed here: a North Carolina driver's license, a copy of a current utility bill, bank statement, paycheck, or any other government document with your name and address, or a college ID with proof of campus residency. Meanwhile, in South Carolina, voting early is called absentee in person. Absentee in person runs through November 2nd, the day before Election Day. This works by simply going to your voter registration office, filling out a ballot, and then casting it right then and there. You do need to provide an ID for this.
Now, if those options don't work for you, there is always voting on Election Day, November 3rd. In North Carolina, the polls will be open next Tuesday from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. You do not need a photo ID. In South Carolina, the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You do need a photo ID to vote in South Carolina. Still ahead.
Right here in the middle of the newsroom is where we anchor our WBTV News Now coverage. At this desk,
what election night will look like here at WBTV.
The new tools we're using to track races here in our area. Plus,
the pressure is more on Donald Trump to win North Carolina.
Why North Carolina is so crucial to winning the presidency.
And what happens if your absentee ballot is rejected? Our team of reporters is here to explain.
You're watching a WBTV special, your guide to Campaign 2020. Welcome back to your guide to Campaign 2020. The race for the White House certainly being run through North Carolina. Both President Trump and former Vice President Biden have made multiple stops in our area.
No one in America should be working for a 40-hour-a-week job and still be living in poverty.
We will end surprise medical billing. The days of ripping off American patients are over.
And they have both been spending millions of dollars on campaign ads. It may leave you wondering, why are we so popular? Well, it all has to do with this number right here, 15. It is how many electoral votes are at stake here in North Carolina. Now, if you win here by 1 vote or 500,000 votes, you get all 15 of them. And those 15 could ultimately decide who wins the White House.
The pressure is more on Donald Trump to win North Carolina. There's not really many scenarios that he can get to 270 votes without winning a traditionally Republican state like North Carolina.
It does take 270 electoral votes to win the election. Now, a week out, here is a general idea of where we are right now based on polling. Keeping in mind, these are polls, not actual votes. And you can see how the map is laid out right now. Joe Biden leads in states, giving him about 260 electoral votes. Donald Trump at 163. This scenario leaves 7 states in play. You see Arizona, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Now, let's assume Arizona, Iowa, Ohio, Georgia, and Florida revert back to 2016 and they go for President Trump again. Suddenly that makes it 260 to 243. And then we're down to Pennsylvania and North Carolina. The president made 3 stops in Pennsylvania yesterday, another very close state. Let's say he pulls that out again like he did in 2016. Give him those 20 electoral votes. Suddenly now he's at 263. Biden's still sitting here at 260. The winner of North Carolina would then win the White House. That is why we are so popular in 2020. Maureen?
So well explained, Jamie. Let's break away now for your race rundown. As you just saw, North Carolina is a must-win for the race for the White House, but we also have some very important local elections that you will be voting on.
The governor's race features 2 candidates already in office, Democrat Governor Roy Cooper and Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest. Cooper has served as governor for the last 3 years. Forest has been lieutenant governor for the last 7 years. They have vastly different opinions on the pandemic, masks, and getting kids back in school buildings. They debated those topics in early October during their only debate before the election.
You know, politicians like this who hold these in-person events and discourage masks, they're part of the problem. They make it harder for us to ease our safety measures.
Masks is a great cover for what he really doesn't want to talk about. The over 1.5 million people that he has left unemployed, the thousands of businesses that have been shut down.
Also on the ballot, 8 positions on North Carolina's highest courts. 3 North Carolina Supreme Court seats and 5 Court of Appeal seats are up for grabs. Those elected make important decisions that impact everyone in the state. Unfortunately, political scientists say positions on the courts and the candidates are often overlooked.
It doesn't seem like anyone in politics can get along anymore. There's a lot of trouble getting stuff through on compromise, and so much of this winds up getting resolved by the courts instead of by the politicians.
Here's why you should know who you're voting for. The appeals court makes major decisions on all kinds of cases, from drunk driving to decisions on voting rights and redistricting.
We have these elections because we want to hold these judges accountable for their decisions when they are incumbents, and because we want to pick the judges who will make the best decisions. And yet we waste that opportunity most of the time.
Make sure you don't waste the opportunity. Still to come on your guide to Campaign 2020.
We can't put our finger on the number, but we just know that we're going to be busy.
Polling sites look a lot different this year, from hand sanitizer to checking voter statuses. We're getting a look at all the extra work underway to keep the voting process smooth and safe. Welcome back to our WBTV special, Your Guide to Campaign 2020. An election during a pandemic makes voting in person a lot different. As school gymnasiums, community centers, and churches transform into voting sites, they're having to do some extra training to make sure everything is safe for you to vote. WBTV's Caroline Hicks got a walkthrough of the in-person voting process in Union County.
Early voting in Union County will look a little bit different this year. Markings on the ground show you where to stand as you wait in line to vote. And once you get inside of that voting location, you'll also notice some changes. You can see that the booths are spaced at least 6 feet apart, and I'm told workers will be sanitizing those between each voter.
We can't put our finger on the number, but we just know that we're going to be busy and it's going to be a huge turnout.
Union County Elections Coordinator Sandra Coble says about 240 poll workers will be at early voting sites.
Some people that have never thought that they would work for the Board of Elections before, hearing that we needed help, and they wanted to be that outlet to help the citizen get through the process of voting.
Coble just finished training the workers, preparing them to handle tough situations like a voter trying to vote twice.
If a voter comes in and the system has them flagged as voted as absentee, they'll inform the voter that our records indicate that you have voted absentee.
If the voter still insists, they allow what's called provisional voting.
Provisional ballots are held and researched by the team of provisional workers.
When you show up to sign in, there will be a plexiglass barrier set up here, separating the voter from the poll worker. Protecting the election
and your health and safety. They will offer each voter a mask and hand sanitizer at the door.
We just want everyone to be able to get out and vote, whether it's early voting, voting by mail, or on Election Day.
That was our Caroline Hicks reporting. Coming up next.
And we will embargo those results until 7:30 that night.
A look at what happens to your ballot as we count down to Election Day.
Plus, the ever-growing importance of the suburbs in our elections.
That is the one area that I'm going to be watching extremely closely, those urban suburbs.
And how WBTV and CBS will be tracking results for you on Election night.
You're watching a WBTV special, your guide to Campaign 2020. Welcome back to our WBTV special, your guide to Campaign 2020. By now, we have walked you through the process to actually get your ballot to an elections office. But what happens leading up to Election Day itself?
We've had a record number, Jamie, of ballots mailed in this election, as you know, but the rules as far as when they can be counted vary from state to state. There are two important steps to the ballot counting system. First, there is processing. That is basically quality checking a ballot to make sure it can be counted. Then there is counting. That means the ballot is run through a tabulator to be counted. But none of that data is released or even seen by anyone before the polls close. North Carolina processes and counts before Election Day. It began processing envelopes at the end of September. Elections officials can run ballots through the tabulator 2 weeks before Election Day. Michael Dickerson is the director of Mecklenburg County Elections. He explains the process.
And then on Election Day itself, at our 2 o'clock election board meeting, they will tell Michael, okay, pull all those out, give me the readers, let's run these thumb drives through the reader and give me a result. And we will embargo those results until 7:30 that night and post those with the early votes that will go out first thing at 7:30.
Yeah, those are the numbers you first hear when we broadcast on the night of Election Day. South Carolina, a little more complicated. That's because there are two envelopes. An outside envelope has the basics, a name and signatures. Inside of that is a secrecy envelope with the actual ballot. All of those ballots are checked from the outside as they come in, but they are not actually opened until the Sunday night before the election, and then they are not counted until the morning of Election Day. The results are not released until after the polls close. Of course, part of that processing means rejecting ballots, and the rules are different in each of the Carolinas, Jamie.
And it's been confusing for people to keep track of it all. From ballot requirements to timelines, there have been legal battles over the rules in both North Carolina and South Carolina. So we brought in WBTV Investigates Nick Oxner and our South Carolina reporter Morgan Newell to go over all of this one more time. We're going to start with Nick. Nick, explain a bit about why a ballot might be rejected in North Carolina and then where we stand when it comes to curing or fixing that ballot.
Yeah, Jamie, the only reason a ballot's going to be outright rejected in North Carolina for this election is if it's missing a witness signature or the signature of someone who assisted the voter in filling out that ballot. Now, that being said, there are a lot of things that could be wrong with the ballot that could lead to a voter needing to cure or fix that ballot. That's missing witness information, missing addresses from the voter, a signature in the wrong place. But starting last Monday, county boards of elections have been sending out emails calling people with a form for the voter to fill out and send back to the Board of Elections that basically fixed almost all of the problems except for that missing witness or assistant signature.
And Nick, real quick, follow up for us if you can about getting that ballot in by a certain deadline. We've been told if it's postmarked by Election Day, it's going to be counted a few days after Election Day. Is that still the rule as we speak?
As we speak, Jamie, regardless, your ballot must be postmarked by Election Day. There's still an ongoing fight in North Carolina, though, over how many days after the election county boards of elections will be able to accept absentee ballots. By law, it's 6 days. But right now, under a settlement between the State Board of Elections and outside groups, they've expanded that longer, 10 days. And so that's currently pending before the U.S. Supreme Court. We expected a decision yesterday or today. We still don't have one. So that could get back shorter again, depending on what the Supreme Court rules.
We'll be watching for that. We know you will as well. Nick, appreciate the insight as always. Now let's turn things over to our Morgan Newell. Morgan, you've been following the process in South Carolina. There has certainly been some concern and confusion there as well. Bring us up to date.
Yeah, Jamie, just since Friday to today, 250 more ballots have been rejected throughout the Palmetto State. Now, there are 3 reasons why your ballot would be rejected: no voter signature, no witness signature, and it's returned too late. The witness signature is the biggest reason why a ballot isn't counted. This year, election officials are expecting record rejections. Part of the reason is volume of mail-in ballots. At 5 p.m., 362,000 ballots were cast by mail. The back and forth on witness signatures doesn't help the record either. Within about a month, the witness signature requirement went back and forth about 4 times before it was required. Now those rejection numbers aren't exactly accurate. Here in York County, they're showing 0 ballots have been rejected. It's not true. They have had ballots rejected. They just haven't put them in the system yet. So we're waiting for those numbers and expecting a lot more than just the 1,700 we already have rejected. Back to you.
One of the storylines we'll follow. Morgan, thank you. Nick Oxner, thank you as well. Now let's switch gears and look at the ballot itself. If you live in South Carolina, some big decisions to be made, Maureen.
There certainly are, Jamie. A lot at stake. There's a big race for U.S. Senator, but also a race for sheriff and several House seats. Here is your race rundown. Senator Lindsey Graham and his Democratic challenger Jamie Harrison are fighting for the South Carolina U.S. Senate seat. Harrison is an associate chairman of the Democratic National Committee and previously served as the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party. He says he is willing to cross party lines to get things done for South Carolina.
If Nancy Pelosi or if Mitch McConnell or if anybody, if Donald Trump is for broadband in South Carolina, then they're with Jamie Harrison. If they're about saving our rural hospitals, then they're with Jamie Harrison. If they are about making sure there's opportunity for every one of our students, then they're with Jamie Harrison.
Incumbent Lindsey Graham has held the seat in the Senate since 2002. He says he's always been consistent and will continue to be the voice for South Carolinians.
I would say that my support among the Republican Party is as wide and deep as it's ever been. I've tried my best to represent the state's interest in Washington with a level of commitment, but also an understanding that the way you treat people does matter.
If you live in Chester County, South Carolina, you will see the names Max Dorsey and Alex Underwood on your ballots. They're running for the Chester County Sheriff, and they both have experience on the job. Governor Henry McMaster appointed Dorsey and suspended Underwood in May of last year. Underwood is currently under indictment by federal and South Carolina prosecutors for excessive use of force and alleged cover-ups. Underwood was the first ever African-American sheriff elected in Chester County. He first won the election in 2012 and was re-elected in 2016. Another race we're paying close attention to is the U.S. House of Representatives, South Carolina's 5th Congressional District. Republican Ralph Norman is the incumbent. He previously served in the South Carolina House of Representatives for 10 years. Running against him is newcomer and Democrat Mo Brown. The former University of South Carolina football player worked in the state commerce department under former Governor Nikki Haley and beat former York County Council member Sidney Moore in the primaries. South Carolina's 44th district is represented by Democrat Mandy Powers Norrell. Powers Norrell is the incumbent, serving in her role since 2012. She's also on the Legislative Oversight Committee. Running against her is Republican Sandy McGarry, the Lancaster County Republican chairwoman. WBTV is on your side, tracking all of those races for you. You can find more information on each one by going to WBTV.com/election. We have a guide to each state, each race, and polling locations. You'll find it right there. Coming up next.
A look at how WBTV will be on your side tracking results on election night. I've got a look at the new tools we'll be using.
Plus, how the election could come down to the suburbs.
The Pinevilles, the Mint Hills, the Corneliuses, the Huntersville. How do they respond?
And from infrastructure to affordable housing.
Just because I may not have what the next person have, or because I fit in a certain income bracket or category, I still should have adequate housing.
The bonds on your ballot if you live in Mecklenburg County.
You're watching a WBTV special, your guide to Campaign 2020. Welcome back to our WBTV special, your guide to Campaign 2020. As we have said, we are now 1 week out from election night, and Maureen, a lot of preps underway to track the results.
And that means at CBS News New York and right here, Jamie, at WBTV, for the first time, CBS News will broadcast election night coverage from Times Square. Here's a look at their new state-of-the-art election night studio. There are 2 zones that can use augmented reality to show the state of the presidential race and track which party will control the U.S. Senate. There will also be dozens of displays throughout the studio showing voting data and mapping. Super cool. The CBS News Decision Desk will make projections throughout the night. CBS's election coverage will begin right here on WBTV at 7 p.m. and continue throughout the evening. And in our WBTV newsroom, we will be tracking the results for you as well. We will be giving updates every 30 minutes on air. We'll be on air for the entire 11 o'clock hour, and we'll also be tracking live for you online and on our streaming devices. WBTV anchor Alex Giles with a look now at the new resources we're utilizing to track the election as the numbers come in.
Right here in the middle of the newsroom is where we anchor our WBTV News Now coverage. At this desk, we are totally plugged in. We have access to social media, live video feeds, and we've got the ability to bring you new information as soon as we get it. All of this will be on your live streaming devices. You'll be able to watch WBTV News Now on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. We'll also, of course, be mirroring our coverage on Facebook Live. We will be providing updates on the most important races throughout the evening on election night, giving you a first look at an interactive map that is tracking the biggest contest right here in the Carolinas. We'll also be taking a look at a national map and giving you the up-to-the-minute updates on the race for the White House. So make sure you join us here on election night. We'll be streaming right here for WBTV News Now. Jamie?
Alex Giles, appreciate it as always. You know, election night means taking that deep dive into the data, looking for clues as to why a candidate might pull out a victory. Now, there are 2 trend lines we have seen widen over the past few election cycles. Voters in rural parts of our state going one way, voters in our larger cities going another. Take a look at 2016 and the race for president in North Carolina. Hillary Clinton won Mecklenburg County by 140,000 votes. But look at what happened here in all of the counties surrounding Mecklenburg. Smaller populations for sure, but when added up, Donald Trump carried them by 179,000 votes. So actually more votes in our area, in the surrounding areas, than in Mecklenburg. The divide wasn't always this dramatic, though. Look at this data right here. This shows margin of victory by percentage in presidential races. In 1996, Democrat Bill Clinton won Mecklenburg by just 3%. Republican Bob Dole won Lincoln County by 18%. Well, those gaps have been widening ever since. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won Mecklenburg by 29%. Donald Trump won Lincoln County by 47%. Those margins will be interesting to watch on election night, but that's not all. There's a real reason here to zoom in on the suburbs.
And that is the one area that I'm going to be watching extremely closely. Those urban suburbs, the Pinevilles, the Mint Hills, the Corneliuses, the Huntersville. How do they respond? Typically across North Carolina, those regions of the state are dead even.
Actually, some parts of those suburbs have actually been strongholds for Republicans, but 2018 signaled a shift. Here's one example. Precinct 215 is in the heart of Matthews, southeast Mecklenburg County. In the 2016 congressional election there, the Republican candidate won 57% of the vote in that precinct, 43% going to the Democrats. But look at 2018. The Republican candidate slipped to 43%. The Democrat jumped to 54%. As Dr. Bitzer pointed out there, these will certainly be areas to watch on election night. And to give us some more perspective on all this, we're joined now live by our Salisbury Bureau reporter, David Wisnett. And David, I know you see stark differences right there in the communities where you do most of your reporting.
I really do, Jamie. And if you're going to talk about politics in Rowan County, you have to use a red Sharpie, and you have to use a lot of it, because that has been the trend here. Like some of the counties you were just talking about, Rowan County has become more red. I went back to 2016 to look at how things went during that election and put together a few numbers for you. Some pretty surprising stuff here. In Rowan County in 2016, every Republican from the state level up won, and in almost every case they won by pretty big margins. Let me give you just a couple examples. In Rowan County in 2016, Donald Trump had 42,810 votes to Hillary Clinton's 19,400 votes. That's a margin of 66% for Trump, 30% for Clinton. Richard Burr also was a big winner. Richard Hudson, and then you go down to Ted Budd, which was about the closest one. That race, Ted Budd's precinct, or district rather, took in a good part of Salisbury, of the city of Salisbury, so that ended up being the closest race. And that shows you sort of that urban and rural divide, because a lot of the voters here in the city went for Davis over Budd, and that was the closest one. But then, Pat McCrory, 40,000 votes in Rowan County. Roy Cooper, 21,000 votes. 63% for McCrory, 33% for Cooper. I think I have some folks coming through here in just a minute.
Sure.
Obviously, we know that Roy Cooper won the governor's race.
Nothing we can do about that, David. Things happen. Unfortunately, we're doing live reports, but you illustrate the point exactly. There has been this widening divide that we have seen, urban, rural, and it is going to be an interesting factor come election night as well. David Wisnett reporting for us live tonight. David, appreciate it. Now, there are other issues on the ballot that have nothing to do with partisan, Republican or Democrat. Some big items, in fact, right here in Mecklenburg County that don't come down to party affiliation at all. Maureen?
Jamie, we're talking specifically about Mecklenburg County, from funding for affordable housing and transportation to county commissioners. Here is another race rundown.
A look at how WBTV will be on your side tracking results on election night. I've got a look at the new tools we'll be using.
Plus, how the election could come down to the suburbs.
The Pinevilles, the Mint Hills, the Corneliuses, the Huntersville. How do they respond?
And from infrastructure to affordable housing.
Just because I may not have what the next person have, or because I fit in a certain income bracket or category, I still should have adequate housing.
The bonds on your ballot if you live in Mecklenburg County.
You're watching a WBTV special, your guide to campaign 2020.
A look at how WBTV will be on your side tracking results on election night. I've got a look at the new tools we'll be using.
Plus, how the election could come down to the...
Welcome back to our WBTV special, Your Guide to Campaign 2020. We want to get to those Mecklenburg County races. In 2018, only Democrats won races for the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners. That includes in Districts 1, 5, and 6, which were longtime Republican strongholds. We also have 3 bond referendums in Mecklenburg County: a neighborhood improvement bond, an affordable housing bond, and a transportation bond. Those are all things that will change neighborhoods, change family situations, and change the way people can get to and from jobs. Another race to pay attention to in North Carolina is the 9th Congressional District. The 9th Congressional District is represented currently by Republican Dan Bishop. Democrat Cynthia Wallace is running against him. She hopes to win that seat. And Jamie, when we think about all of the money that Mecklenburg County voters are having to answer to, say yes or no,
right,
well over $160 million worth of referendums there. And that's going to be something people are going to wrestle with. Do they want us to spend that kind of money on transportation when so many people are concerned about back to work and getting people back on jobs.
Well, that is part of what this election is about. We focus a lot on the presidential races, the big Senate races. It's local issues, curbs, sidewalks, roads, etc., that are also on this ballot. So things you need to pay attention to as we count down towards Election Day.
This has been fun, and we really appreciate you joining us as we do that countdown to Election Day. We've got so much more information, Jamie.
Yeah, again, Election Day only a week away. We'll be right here tracking the results for you on election night.
In the meantime, if you want a complete guide to voting, all you have to do is head to WBTV.com/election. There you can find information on how to find your polling location, as well as the races that are really important where you live.
And we are still bringing you On Your Side Tonight voter guides each Friday leading up to the election. We'll be back this Friday at 7:30 walking you through what you need to know about Election Day and the security of our election. Thanks for being here for this WBTV special.
Be sure to tune into WBTV News at 11.